Hello, it is Blueies and Chewies. Big Pooch here with you to talk you through this last weekend's Autumn International Series games. A far better week in terms of quality of rugby, I certainly thought. Before I get going, I always forget, please, the old like and subscribe. Help me, probably more from a motivation point of view. Keeps the old boy engaged. Please, all your support is greatly appreciated. Let me know your thoughts. There's a couple of key takeaways from this weekend as a whole, certainly as far as referees and TMOs that I want to get your thoughts on. Equally, any of the points raised, agree, disagree, let us know in the comments. Appreciate the support. I'll be, before I shoot through, I'll be starting on the Irish-Argentina game, South Africa, England, and the French-New Zealand game. What a cracker that was. But before I get going, the TMO within rugby is becoming a frustrating concept, which it really shouldn't do from my point of view. I'm all for empowering referees to own and run the game for the most part. I appreciate things like croc rolls are hard to manage overall, given the nuances of the game, the speed at which it moves, and the ability to see everything for referees. But if I think back to the Rugby World Cup final, Ardis Sevilla had a blatant knock-on in the maul, which then further led to a try. For me, that was so abundantly obvious for anyone watching on TV. And I understand the frustration of Kiwi fans and All Blacks having the try disallowed, given, 10 phases later, they ended up scoring the try. There was certainly an instance last week with South Africa, Scotland, this week in the Argentina-Irish game, again in the English-South Africa game, and the French-New Zealand game, where, for me, there are blatant errors missed by the referee. Those should be immediately called up by the TMO. Why are people scoring tries or getting 7-8 phases later for something that is abundantly obvious being missed? There's a disconnect there. If a fan can see it to the naked eye in something that isn't nuanced, that needs to immediately be brought to the referee's attention, because it's something similar to VAR for anyone watches football. Your team scores a goal, and for 2 minutes later, you still don't know whether the celebration you've just had is going to be called off because of someone being half an inch offside, or someone picking their nose before the goal scored, or someone's hairstyle not in the right condition. But there are some really obvious errors missed by the referee. Those need to immediately be brought to the attention of the referee by the TMO. Let's not get 6, 7, 8 phases later down the road and point out something abundantly obvious. Let me know your thoughts. Certainly frustrating from my point of view, and really make the spectacle quite frustrating, because we're taking out time out of the game. We're introducing more opportunities for players to get injured. And it's just not a good look for a game that's ultimately trying to grow its audience. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll shoot straight in and be fairly brief on the Irish-Argentina game. The big thing for me with Argentina-Ireland again displays something that Argentina could really improve on before I give them their flowers on my key takeaway, which is when they are taking damage, as it were, when you think back to South Africa in Argentina going 17 points up. Now, what a win it was for Argentina to come back in that game in, unique circumstances, in that humidity in Argentina. But when they do take damage, they seem to not be able to reduce that infliction and limit the bleeding early on. So 2 tries are scored. And the great Albanos, this guy's reputation is growing and growing fast. He's exciting with ball in hand, an incredibly accurate goal kicker. If they can keep him fit, Argentina, they've got potentially one of the stars in the first receiver jersey. Unbelievable. He's had a brilliant rugby championship, and again displayed through his goal kicking and his attacking ability, namely in the second half. There were some really good plays, albeit I thought it was a lot of pick and goes in the first half, to really keep Argentina in it. Now, they go 2 tries down. He keeps it in it with the boot with a few penalty kicks. I really thought that Ireland were going to really march to victory quite easily after the McCarthy try. Again, after the McCarthy try, Argentina tried to build a little bit of momentum. Van der Fleer then quickly gets a great turnover at the breakdown. Argentina again then in the closing stages of the first half, pick and drives, build a number of phase play. But every time they seemed to go out the back line, they didn't seem to be able to connect with whatever plays they had set up. And I just thought they needed a little bit more variety, because once Ireland got a grip with the pick and drives, they really seemed to lack options, Argentina. And I really thought the game was dead and buried, certainly in first half, like I say, after the McCarthy try. But my big takeaway is both through Checker initially and now under Contepomi, Argentina are developing a far better backbone, far better morale, as far as they are displaying when their backs are against the wall and the games look dead and buried, to stay in it, chip away, and find a way to actually make a game of it. Unbelievable. I mean, the try by Juan Malia, the fullback, was a piece of genius. The way he sold Mac Hansen at the end was unbelievable. Thought Grant Williams scored something similar, but I will say Juan Malia's try was probably a level above Grant Williams' great try. Fabulous footwork, speed, everything that you'd need, and the classy finish at the end. Argentina showed an ability to stay in a game. And look, I don't think Irish discipline is helping them at the moment. I think this has been a long-running theme for Irish rugby over the last 12, 18 months when they have played poorly. And look, that's not many times, but the one point that seems to be a recurring issue is their indiscipline, whether that's Porter and maybe how he's viewed at scrum time, or obviously again at the breakdowns, where they seem to be giving teams an opportunity to hang in there through penalties. But Albonos' ability then in the second half to take more control and really make a game of it was phenomenal. His reputation is one that I'm excited to keep watching. He's an extremely exciting player. So they displayed a great ability to get back into the game. Phenomenal. And kudos to them, because, ultimately when it comes to sport, it's fine margins. And when you go a few points down, as we saw, the Irish-New Zealand game in the quarterfinals of the Rugby World Cup, when you do go 2 tries down, it is very difficult to fight back and win a game, because ultimately the effort and endeavour to get yourself back into the game also requires the ability to keep the other team out. And when you fight back from 2 tries down and get back into the game, the likelihood is the other team has another couple of tries in them at some point, and then that endeavour becomes just a little bit too much for teams to overcome. And again, while they were close to no avail this last weekend, at the end of both halves, they just lacked a little something to get them obviously over the line. First half, just a pick and drives, and then lacking that killer X factor, similar to the end of the second half. The big takeaway for me again is the ability for Argentina to remain in games and slowly but surely chip away and find out, and then add that little bit of X factor as we saw Juan Malia's try, and really make a game of it against the top nations in the world. This could be a really good era for Argentinian rugby. I'm not too au fait with what their youth team looks like, but with their ability of their players, now that they're not in Super Rugby, to play in great competitions in Europe, then come together and be very, they're a patriotic nation if you see their football, as is their rugby. They have guilty of years gone by of when they have gone down to, downing tools. But this is a new look Argentina team. We've got to give our flowers to Felipe Contepomi. This could be a good little era coming up for Argentinian rugby, and kudos to them. Moving on to the Springboks against the English. One of their key arch rivals, it really has to be New Zealand and England that are South Africa's greatest foes. And what a start by England. I said it in the last podcast. I think Marcus Smith, the ability to read where Eben Etzebeth had shot out the line, or where he had lined up for a drop kick. Eben Etzebeth's speed for the size of man to blitz that potential drop kick was phenomenal. But what was equally phenomenal and probably even better was Marcus Smith's ability to read where he had left a gap to come in and play down that short side for Slightholme to go in. That was a phenomenal try. And I think Marcus Smith really has the ability to potentially be the best 10 in the world. And gathering my thoughts over the last couple of weeks, I did say that I think as a whole, the leadership, when I consider the guys like Itoje, Jamie George, Genge, the boys in the forward pack, certainly allowing the game last week to be too open and play into Tom Wright's hands and the Wallabies as a whole. So it is something that I've digested further, and I think maybe there is a little bit more onus on Marcus Smith to... there was a part in that first half where he had advised OG which way to go, and he wasn't clearly set up for that next phase of play. So I do think he's an extremely exciting rugby player. He's got the ability to break teams open, create line breaks both himself or through off the boot and his passing game. But maybe just when there is times to take more of a hold on a game, build possession, tie the team through tackling and the like, maybe I think there's a little bit more work for him to do in that area. I do think he's got all the skills to do that. However, when you are losing games and losing tight games, when you aren't creating that winning ability, that can be difficult to create those winning habits. But I think that's probably just a part, in terms of the game management side, that he may want to invest in a little bit of that sort of concept and mentality through someone like Ford or Farrell, really getting those boys and sitting down with those guys and really understanding where he is in games and what outcomes he should have potentially taken other than the options he has, just to understand where that missing link is being the orchestrator of a rugby team. Because when he's hot, he's exceptional. But when there are times where it does require maybe a bit more of a conservative game plan, there's something missing there. I don't think all the onus sits with him, but in the position of a fly half, the impetus, like a quarterback in NFL, the buck sometimes stops with you. And so it's whether it's reining in the more experienced players within the team, whether that be Slade, Itoje, Genge, George, and just getting a grip on what kind of game plan they want to come up with for the next 5 or 10 minutes to either limit the damage that's been inflicted or to drive home where they are maybe not taking advantage with teams, where they may have possession and not putting teams away. Grant Williams, as I touched on a little bit earlier there, phenomenal tries. I thought South Africa were lackadaisical, in those first 10, 15 minutes, really struggled to get into the game. An immediate piece of genius by Grant Williams, sniping as he did last week around the breakdown, and to sell Freddie Stewart, whilst maybe not quite as good as the Argentinian try. What a try it was, really getting South Africa into the game and really playing to his strengths. I mean, he's got bags of speed, and that's a try straight out of the Grant Williams playbook. Pieter-Steph du Toit, not long after the try, gave away a penalty, of which Marcus Smith calmly converted, and while he came up on screen with hands on hips, I pointed to him and I said to my 3-year-old son, "That's Superman." Now, I did get the obvious rebuttal that he wasn't wearing a cape on, to which I said, "That's Superman." Look, as cheesy as that sounds, a few minutes later, the great Eben Etzebeth charges down Van Port Fleet, only for the one and only du Toit to be following up quickly after and get another charge down himself off Marcus Smith. And what a way to put that away. It does require a bit of dexterity for a man of his size to just keep himself in play and dot down that ball. That's not as easy as it looks for a big forward. And he really is a Superman, Pieter-Steph du Toit. His ability, his engine to keep going game after game. His engine is phenomenal. And I heard Will Greenwood in his post-match analysis, I think just on his Instagram channel, say that he's one of the greatest players to play the game. I don't think you'll find any South African that would argue with that. And I think any rugby fan that watches Pieter-Steph du Toit with an objective view on things would say very much the same. What a player. What an absolute player. Something that I was surprised to see the Springboks do was the volume of kicking. Given Freddie Stewart was included in the England team at fullback, certainly one of the best, if not the best fullback under the high ball. I know Rassie mentioned after the game that that they'd try not to kick to him as much, that they were doing a lot of swapping, but I would have thought maybe 50, 60 minutes in, when maybe they have got our number in terms of the kicking game, that we would have come up with a different game plan. Lo and behold, it didn't matter in terms of the end result, but I would have thought that we would have maybe just tried to change things up a little bit, given his success in the air and his ability to really take control for England under the high ball. Some of the other big takeaways from the first half was Ben Earl's ability. I've spoken about this just last week, where Ben Earl last year at the World Cup and the subsequent Six Nations looked unbelievable off the back of the base for scrums, running with ball in hand. He's got a strong ability to keep his leg drives going. He's almost at times, with his speed, like a inside centre crash ball. He was phenomenal. I think he's been quiet recently, whether it's just teams playing for that, I assume. But he really seemed to target Manie Lebok. Gron Williams obviously isn't as physical as a Faf de Klerk, for instance. But he seemed to have to be making far better headway with ball in hand, certainly in the first half and early in the second. Against Manie Lebok, I think they're obviously targeting from a defence point of view. And the second point was, I thought Itoje was getting away with murder in that first half. I thought there was a couple of occasions where he was yellow card offensing. I thought there was a number of occasions where he could have received the yellow card, lying across the ruck, slowing that ball down. Whether it's getting a foot or a hand over the ball or touching the scrum half. I thought there was a number of occasions. Just again, that 0.5 seconds makes a difference. He's playing his role obviously for England, as Richie McCaw did, really played on that borderline of legal and illegal. But certainly I thought there was a number of infringements there, and I don't think the ref was even warning him. So a bit disappointing. I thought the referee had a poor game overall, despite the South African win. And again, what I mentioned earlier, again, your comments would be greatly appreciated on the referee. I thought it was a tough call, the forward pass by Fussy for the Argentina try. But my frustration is, as a fan, we've watched that 10 times on TV. 10 times, the highlights, the replays, only for it then to be called. Why does it take so long for these infringements to be called? Looks like it came out flat to me, out of his hands, and then drifted forward. But if you are going to call it, why are we watching 7, 8 different replays, all chatting, and then for the commentators to go, oh, this looked forward or looked straight, and then only for the referee to be called up? Again, frustrating part for me. England's ability to take kickoffs, again, their woes continued. If we remember last week, Joseph Suhalihi seemed to really have the English's number, being able to really get up high, flick the ball back for the Wallabies a few times. Whether it was kickoff receives or South Africa getting ball to hand again, as the Aussies did. Between Itoje being as good as a player as he is, as well as Borthwick et al. Within the English setup, not getting a rein on that, especially after being a really poor area for the English last week. I thought South Africa were able to turn over some quick ball. Cheslin Colby is really one of a kind. I think he's one of the players that when I think of football, for instance, and I was growing up and watching Ronaldinho, he's one of those players that brought a smile to my face. Really just his ability to enjoy what he did, the smile on his face, and not only the skill and genius, but always to have an end result. There's many players that, can dribble, that have flashes of brilliance, but often with no end result. Very similar to Ronaldo when he first started at Manchester United. But Colby's ability is second to none. The kick, I really felt sorry for Freddie Stewart because he was really in a no-win situation. He's either having to watch the ball enter into Cheslin Colby's hands and take Cheslin at the same time that he's catching it, which is milliseconds. But as soon as he catches it, his low center of gravity to be able to just shimmy to one side and make Freddie Stewart look like an idiot is unbelievable. I mean, he's just a defender's nightmare. And obviously, in the second half, he scores a great try. He adds slight home to a number of Englishmen and British and Irish Lions that he's given that right footstep to. And you think of Rugby World Cup final in 2019, this game last gone, the British and Irish Lions, I think it was the South African A game, where again he sort of did a shimmy. It is one of the great things to see in rugby, the low sense of gravity, the quick feet and the speed. What a player. I'm not sure there's a player that brings a smile to my face more than him. What an absolute genius. I thought South Africa did very well in that second half to mitigate the yellow card of Steenkamp. There was the scrum on the right side of the touchline. Parker Smith had just come on, where Pieter-Steph du Toit moved to lock. Wasn't it great to see RG Snyman do 18 minutes as a Springbok fan? But for them to get the ball in and out very quickly, there was an opportunity there for England to potentially get a turnover with a man less in scrum for South Africa. But we managed to hold that out. What a win. And look, the last 10 minutes were really a mirage of basic errors. When you think South Africa at the line out, there was a couple of overthrown line outs. Again, that's probably for me the biggest issue with South Africa at the moment is the line out. I saw Victor Matfield do something for Supersport on the four-man line out and the issues that causes and the difficulty in getting that right. I think if we maybe just stick to basics, earlier in the season when we're playing a weakened Wallabies team and we're trying some fancy stuff, fair enough. But when we do have a number of games in a row where it's not coming off, back to basics, lads. England themselves were making a few errors, and so I think both teams were trading mistakes, but equally moments of brilliance when you think of a couple of breakdown steals by the Springboks. And then for Damien Deleande, who I thought had a fairly quiet game, but just to be able to break the line off a couple of tackles and set up Colby for that try. Good win for South Africa in the end. Still probably 6, 7 out of 10, which again speaks to the brilliance of this team, not quite being at the races, but still beating good quality opposition. And then subsequently building depth and with the likes of the Steenkamps of the world, the Wilco Lows, and who knows, we might see the first test for Cameron Hanekom against a depleted Wales team at the moment. Quickly on to the French-New Zealand game. What a game this was. Probably the game of the weekend. Unbelievable result. 1 point win for the French. But I must say, the first half, France come out the blocks, reminded me very much of the quarterfinals against South Africa. Massive pack. Even as a South African, these guys look scary. For the love of God, Mafau, I think his name is, the lock, born in New Zealand, brought up in Australia, plays for France. I do think there's a bit of skullduggery for the French with their deep pockets. I've obviously looked at South African schoolboy rugby and looking to get guys over there. We know Willemse, for instance, the other lock that plays for them. Big bruises. I thought New Zealand played fabulous, brilliant in the first half. Their ability to absorb the French power game and really, bob and weave, counter punch through brilliant turnovers, forcing errors, and then, some brilliant tries by New Zealand in that first half. I know Cam Roigard has a big reputation in New Zealand. I haven't seen a huge amount of him. He obviously missed the World Cup due to injury, but he seems to have more of that distributing game that the great Aaron Smith has, and he seems to get a lot of reps on his passes. I'm keen to watch a bit more of him, but seems to play more of that distributor game, not the Ron Williams, Tate McDermott sniping around the breakdown, but it delivers a really good pass. I'm keen to see a bit more of him. I thought he played brilliant in the first half. But then in the second half, the French really seemed to be able to exert their dominance as far as size of pack in their power game. And a couple of quick tries. And for me, what was very similar to a New Zealand try, what was it, a knock-on or a pass that went off the back line, only for a hump forward by Ramos, I think it was, for Biari to score. That reminded me of a typical All-Back try, again, to get a quick turnover and score a try. The French ultimately got over the line. Dupont, not a bad game, but not a great game. When we're considering World Player of the Year, I was devastated to see Oxenchair go off early in that game. He, for me, is certainly one of the front runners along with Cheslin Colby. So after Colby's amazing game against England, how does that sway the voters? Dupont being a little bit quieter, obviously winning the gold for the French in the Olympics, but falling short in the Rugby World Cup. How does that rank in people's minds? Let me know your thoughts. I know if we're listening to South Africans, I'm going to hear a Cheslin Colby, Oxenchair, maybe even a Pieter-Steph du Toit. I mean, the guy sets such a high standard for himself. You're often a victim of your own success and performance when you play week in and week out at an 8 or 9. But I think given the PR, the influence I do think that French rugby has in world rugby, Dupont will certainly be there, and I do think he is the world's best scrum half without question. He's a genius. But I do think playing sevens this year doesn't take it off in terms of games played, potentially. Let me know your thoughts. He is an absolute stud, is Dupont, and really reinvented the game. I really don't think he's got a weak part in his game. I do think he was slightly off it, so credit to New Zealand. I think a lot of it comes down to how New Zealand were able to impact his game and his influence on the game. Also within the second half, sorry, I know I've rambled a little bit in terms of this game. Roigard got his penalty after not getting the ball out, despite the ball for me still being in the middle of the ruck, being asked to use it and not using it within the allotted seconds. For me in the first half, there were a number of occasions where the referee said use it to Dupont, and then another player came to add to the trailer that they already had for him, then to box kick from there. For me, there was certainly more seconds lost in those first half rucks with Dupont adding another player as a trailer to an already formed ruck, and the referee noting him to use it. So I do think that was a little bit unfair. I think there was a couple of occasions where New Zealand got the wrong end of the stick in terms of referee decisions. And I certainly thought Tamati Williams was fantastic in that first half, especially at scrum time, and didn't get his flowers from the referee. So let me know your thoughts. Were New Zealand hard done by? I thought it was, fabulous game overall. That's the kind of game we want to see. It shows how good world rugby is in those top 7 or 8 spots. Certainly the top 6 could go either way and be a couple of points in at either side. Well done to France. They've got three in a row against New Zealand, and certainly should be a good end to the autumn series next week. Please like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts. Where have I got it wrong? What do you agree with? I look forward to seeing you next week. Cheers.